let's just go ahead and let's just tell the truth, okay? And I'm going to state some facts right here. Because the one thing I've learned about reading about the Essenes, which was a very, very serious sect of the Yehudim at that time, they were so serious that they had very few women in their assembly. This group was so serious about serving the Most High. Y'all, when you read about it, all it does is motivate you. But talking to us today, let's just tell the truth, pastors. Let's just tell the truth. We know, simply, we know them that are among us that are really not with us. We already know it. That they aren't with us. And the truth is, we need to make life easy for them as well as us. We need to send them along their way, because when you look at the Essenes, they have no problem putting anybody out of the assembly. None whatsoever at all. They got rid of, you cast out the scorn of sin and strife will cease. They had no problem with identifying people who are contrary to what they said and just send them along their way. We need to tighten up our vetting process. I'll give an example of what the Essenes. If someone was considering want to come into the Essenes, first thing they would do is they would have them to spend a year outside of the community, living the way that we're living on the community. And then they would have what they'll call curators or overseers. They would have them to go and check on them throughout the year to see how they're doing at their own homestead. All right. I know what this generation would say about that. I can only imagine what their generation said about it back then. It ain't nothing new under the sun. But they were doing this vetting process because they didn't want anybody in their assembly of low character, disobedient, and didn't understand integrity and honor. They just didn't. And then they will still at that take a couple of more years of vetting them to see if they are even worthy to even live among them. It's not hard living on community. We work harder than we probably ever worked in our lives on community because we have an end goal. We know what we're doing. When people have contrary spirit, y'all already know, man. Come on. It ain't that hard. It really, truly is not that hard to be on the community. These people are showing us by their footprint that they don't want to be here. Even though they may say with their mouth they want to, but when you look at their actions, which betray them, they simply don't want to be here. Let me give you an example about someone if they committed heinous sins in the book of Wars of the Yehudim over in Josephus. And it's book 2, chapter 8, 143. But for those that are caught up in any heinous sins, they cast them out of their society. And he who is thus separated from them does often die after a miserable manner. What we're talking about a reliable sources that tells us what happens, because some people are just difficult. They just and there's no need in being difficult, none whatsoever at all. And as hard as we're working to provide this lifestyle, and mind you, you're looking at some pastors here, we're doing this all because of what we read in the renewed covenant, simply because of the first century, and the Holy Spirit has been leading us every step of the way. We're never going to get rid of those who cause division, those who cause problem. That's always going to pop up. But what we are responsible for is how we adjudicate these matters and how we are not to tolerate these people, because I'm telling you, man, the Essenes, they had a very short fuse, because they were even commanded to sign an oath to come into the community to Yah before you could even be part of us. But what we're doing today, they've already done, and it's recorded and it's written about. Book of Wars, book 2, chapter 8, chapter 7, paragraph 139. And before he is allowed to touch their common food, he is obligated to take tremendous oaths that in the first place he will exercise piety towards Yah, and then that he will observe justice towards men. and that he will do no harm to anyone, either of his own accord or by command of others, that he will always hate the wicked and be an assistant to the righteous, that he will ever show fealty to all men, and especially to those in authority, because no one obtains the government without God's or Yah's existence. You hear that? None of us that are sitting here today got what we are today because we chose it of our own. All of us have been assisted by Yah to be in the place that we're in. And that if he be in authority, he will in no time whatever abuse his authority, nor endeavor to outshine his subjects, neither in his garments nor in other finery, that he will perpetually be a lover of truth, and purpose to himself to reprove those that tell lies, that he will keep his hands clear from theft and his soul from unlawful gains, and that he will neither conceal anything from those of his own sect, nor discover any of their doctrines to others, no, not though anyone should compel him so to do as a hazard to his life. Moreover, he swears to communicate their doctrines. In other words, what we've been talking about, if anybody's speaking about anything behind the scene, they made a sworn oath to tell it and expose it before it runs all of its course, because it's nothing but Diablo, the Satan himself. And look what he says. To no one on the otherwise that he receives to himself, that he will abstain from robbery and will equally preserve the books belonging to their sex as the means of angels or messengers. These are the oaths by which secure their proselytes to themselves. But for those who are caught in any heinous sins, that's what I read earlier. But I'm telling you, man, this thing is extremely serious. Extremely serious. And I would venture to say, because we have lost a lot of strength and a lot of weight by being 2,000 years removed from that society with all these captivities. And so it's our job, since Yah is using us to restore this to us and the generations coming behind us, it's our job to pick up the proverbial sword and lead the charge in this particular generation, because they ain't never going to see nothing like it. Because in case you hadn't figured it out by now, there's not too many people that's striving to do what this book says and live what this word says. And so now we have historical documents sitting in front of us, reliable sources sitting in front of us that can guide us and show us how they adjudicated matters, what they did when people went off, what they tolerated from people and what they didn't tolerate, the vetting process in order to get people in. So I personally think that it starts there first. And I think, because y'all have heard me say it, I told you, I said, even when people move to a community, it takes at least 5 years before they can actually get into the real swing of why we're here. That's including diligently working on yourself through deliverance, being purged from your old conscience and your old sins, so you can fit into the community of believers to where the Messiah and by the spirit of the Ruach can do his work.